So basically what I do here is I take my whole build and strip it right down, because I've been fiddling around with it for a long time, but I never really got the cables, properly good, to a point where I was extremely satisfied with them. So what I do here is I basically strip the whole computer down, and then I go step by step and I recorded little clips along the way showing certain things that I'd like to do when I'm building, and just sort of recording that and making sort of a cable management video out of it. Now the first couple clips from this video is actually from a different video that I was planning to make, where I was actually planning to switch coolers and sort of do a different type of video. I changed my mind about the cooler and I didn't end up switching, but the reason I'm leaving part of these in is basically just to show what the cables were like before I started this. So there is some footage of the back of the case before I started. Now what you see there, it has been better than that in the past. It sort of devolved, but it never was satisfactory to me, what I would call a proper good clean cable management job. So this basically I just do from scratch almost a proper cable management job that I'm happy with, and I've recorded clips as I go, sort of showing the methods that I use as I'm building a system. So today I'm here with a bit of a sort of a small update. I'm going to be taking out my D14 and selling it, and I will use an Intel stock cooler for a few days in the meantime until I replace it. And what I'm going to be replacing it with, well, I'll talk about that later. I might be adding another NFP12 into the back area here, because I don't really like the way it looks empty, especially when the area around the CPU is also going to be empty in the future. So that's part of what's going to be happening. I've got the lighting controls in here, but they're falling off a little bit, so I might have to add another layer or two of tape. Everything else is similar. I've got my 840 in there still. I've got a 2 terabyte, sorry, drive for storage, and a 1 terabyte drive for games. I do have the front panel stuff connected, the front panel audio, but I might, not sure yet, disconnect all that stuff and do sort of a really ultra minimal build. But currently I do like it because I like to have my stereo connected into the back all the time, and then being able to plug my headphones into the front at night when I'm watching films, and not have to worry about unplugging the speakers and replugging. So, not sure about that. Might do some things, not sure. I'm gonna have a poke around in here now while I take the cooler off, and I might change some things. Might do some cabling, tidy things up. I might take out the USB 3 front panel headers, because they have that horrible adapter that's so big and bulky, and the way I have the computer right now, it's actually positioned like this behind the desk, because the desk's in the middle of the room. So I have just as easy access to the rear of the case as I do to the front of the case. So really it's not any more convenient having them at the front for me. So I might do that, and I might do sort of an ultra minimal cable job with even less cables around the back. But we'll see. I'll think about what I'm going to be doing, and I will report back. Basically, I'm just pleased to have a bit of an update with some new stuff, hopefully. I've got my, Intel Extreme Masters RAM in there, which you're going to be able to see now better. I've got my, my M-Power board, obviously, which you're going to be able to see better now. And I might do a video on Intel HD4000 stock, or HD4000 graphics performance, and I'll do that while I have the Intel stock cooler on, and then I'll take out the card, and so you'll be able to see the whole board as I do that. So that's it for now, and I'll be back later with more. Alright, so I'm back. I have the D14 off now, as you can see, and my natural light from the window is fading because it's pushing into the evening, but basically I've got Intel Extreme Masters RAM, blue stuff. There's the M-Power, I'm sure you've seen that before. There's my CPU. And I'm just going to be throwing the stock cooler on temporarily for a few days. But I'm just getting the D14 off to take pictures of it and clean it up and all that sort of stuff. So while I'm back here doing the cooler stuff, I'm also going to tidy up these cables a bit. One of the things I always liked seeing people do with their hard drives is sort of having all of the cables come down like one on top of each other, a nice clean path all the way down to the bottom, and then just do a clean little loop and then go along the bottom or go up or whatever. You can see with the power cable I sort of did that. I went top one and then zipped it up along to the bottom one. Or I have two there rather, and then along to that. And then so that's sort of a clean line all the way from the top all the way along to the bottom. So I'm going to do something similar with the serial ITAs, just having one and then the other, and then meeting up with this one and just having it go straight down along to the bottom. And I'll have a photo of that once I'm done doing it. So you can see that I've gone ahead and done that. You see I have the one cable sort of, it looks like just one cable, but if you look, I've got the one cable starting at the top here, and then the next one down is under that, and then it's under that. This third one is under that one. So they're just sort of piled on top of each other, but when you look from the back, it just looks like one cable. So that's something that I never really got a chance to do that properly before, for whatever reason, but I've always liked the look of it, so I've had it sort of on my to-do list to do that. And so this time I decided I would just go ahead and do that. Alright, so I'm back, and now I have the temporary Intel stock cooler. As you can see, lots more space. Just have the CPU at stock speeds. No, it won't focus. Anyway, so there it is, Intel stock cooler. And I will have another update coming soon, where I will show the replacement cooler. Hey, so I'm back, and as you can see, the NH-D14 is back in because I decided that I will keep it for now. And so what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to sort of, I've never been satisfied with the cables here 100%. So I've been, sort of just leaving it, putting it off, but now I've had the system for a while. I've sort of done the majority of the fiddling around with it that I'm going to be doing, and so I figured it's time to just sort of start and just do the cables properly, the way I would consider to be proper. Now I know I am beyond fussy, like I'm so fussy that it's kind of unbelievable, but basically I'm going to be sort of doing a cable management video here. I'm going to be doing my own system sort of from scratch. I'm going to be showing how I sort of do cables and how I would consider doing cables properly in a very sort of long-term way. So that's what I'll be doing today, and I'm going to be doing sort of clips as I go along and showing each stage. I'm going to be taking out a lot of stuff because as I've been using this for a few months now, I've noticed what I do need and what I don't need. And in this case, there's a lot of stuff that's very bulky. For example, the USB 3s doesn't have a 19-pin header right on the actual cable. It just has the really bulky, horrible pass-through. So you need to get an adapter. But on top of all that, they are not even stable, the ports. If you plug any high-powered hard drive into it, it'll actually it'll see it and then it will drop the connection and then come back. So it works okay for low-powered stuff like USB sticks, but for higher-powered stuff it actually drops the connection, so it's not reliable and it's not really very useful. So I'm going to be taking out the USB 3s and just binding them up in the top here. I'm going to be taking out the lighting because I never leave that on. I've had that in there and I never turn it on. I'm going to be taking out, I'm not going to be using these bottom fan headers, and I'm going to be taking out this front panel audio cable probably. The way I'm going to have it set up is I'm going to just have the roof open, and it'll be passive ventilation through the roof. I'll have the D14 here obviously with the one exhaust fan at the back exhausting, and then I'll have the two fans at the front intaking. So there'll be two fans intaking, one exhaust plus the D14 stuff, and that's going to help with the positive air pressure in the case, more air coming in. That's the idea. That's what I've been trying to achieve. I'm going to be obviously cleaning up all these cables with the G14 cables, fan cables. I'm going to have the fan header 1 is here. I'm going to have the front fans on fan header 1, and then fan header 2 is right here next to the rear fan intake. So I'm going to have fan header 2 is exhaust, fan header 1 is intake. I'm also going to be cleaning everything thoroughly. So I took when I had the D14 off, when I was preparing to sell it, I used the air compressor to clean out all the fins very well, and then I used a damp cloth to clean the fan blades. So I cleaned the entire thing, and then I'm also going to clean the video card and the the motherboard and the power supply, and clean the around the front and around the back and everywhere. I do use the air compressor to clean the dust. I know some people say that there's something that drips out of it sometimes, whether it's oil or something, I can't remember exactly, but I asked my father about it, and he said that it sometimes can potentially drip a little bit, but usually it's just at the beginning when you start up the air compressor. So what I do is I start it up, and I always do a few squirts away in the other direction first and get it running, and then I usually at least I don't like you know, you blow the air right, 2-3 inches away or anything like that. I usually stay, at least 2 feet back with the nozzle of the air compressor, and I do it that way, and it's fairly gentle that way, as far as I can tell. So I do that personally, to blow the air out of power supplies and stuff. It works very well. Same with blowing it out of the heatsink on a video card. It works very well. It works very well for everything, really. But if you want to be really, really, really safe, then you just buy a compressed air can, and then that'll be better. Except it doesn't necessarily last very long. With the air compressor, it's obviously unlimited, and that's why I use it. But yeah, that's the other thing I'm going to be doing, along sort of in the spirit of building it up fresh. I'm going to also clean everything so that everything is fresh. So I've been brainstorming about sort of the exact routing of each cable, and you see what I've done with these. This is from before, I haven't done it yet, but you see what I've done with these front panel cables here. I sort of put them, just did a very small loop and put them under the motherboard. So instead of going through one of these grommets and having sort of a longer path. But with this USB one, I was going to do the same thing, but it wasn't. I was sliding them down behind the motherboard without taking the motherboard out. So this time, and it was too big. So this time the header was too big to fit. So this time I'm probably going to do sort of take the USB header and do it like that and put it behind the motherboard, because this is one of the only things that's going to be here, the front panel stuff, and this. So it's going to be sort of like this, and then wrap it behind the motherboard, and so it'll be tucked really tight and really tidy. One thing that I always try to remember to do while I'm working on the inside is take a rag and just put it over the fan grill on the power supply. So that way when you're working and you're doing stuff with screws and doing stuff with zip ties, you're not going to have anything falling into the power supply by accident. So while I'm dismantling everything, I figured I would just quickly show the card. It's dirty because I haven't cleaned it yet, but this is the 7950 twin Frozer. Here's the PCB, which is kind of a, I wish the camera would focus better. It's kind of a brown color, which I like. On the PCI slot side, the sort of inside, the side that's near the motherboard, facing the motherboard, here's the heat pipes. You see the 2 large ones, those are probably 8mm, and 3 smaller ones, probably 6mm, but I don't know for sure what they are. And then on this side you see the 2 fans. And this bezel, by the way, is aluminum, and it's thick. If you have a look here, you see it's very thick, it's very high quality. It's not like these plastic bezels or these thin aluminum bezels that bend. This is a thick bezel. It has a really high-end, high-quality feel to it. And you see also along here it has a brace, all kinds of stuff. It's very, very good. So there's fans, and then on this side you get the 8-pin power and the 6-pin power, because this is the 7970 PCB version. And then it's very small, hard to see, but you actually hear the BIOS switch. And then the fingers for crossfire. Here is what the mesh on the top looks like, and also the screw heads you can see here. The screw heads are quite large. Also the holes are large because there's grommets, rubber grommets in them. And the screws are short, these ones. And they've got the wide head. Sometimes with these kind of cases, if you've got like a radiator and you're using screws that have a small head, it can sometimes pull through these large holes. So you need to make sure the heads are the right size. Make sure the rubber grommet doesn't hurt either because it makes the hole smaller. But yeah, I'm taking these off, and I'm going to be mounting super exciting footage of taking these fans off, and I'm going to be mounting one of them at the back and leaving one of them out as a spare. So the rear fan exhaust mesh area is fairly similar. It does have different mesh, which is the circle mesh. It has a little bit more material in between, which is the same stuff that was in the front that actually was making noise, but for whatever reason you don't really hear much noise at the back. It has large holes with good quality rubber grommets, same as the roof, although the screws that come with the back are a little different. They have a smaller head, so they just look like that. It is raised a bit. It's raised about 2-3 millimeters, just to sort of get the mesh farther away from the fan so that it helps with that resistance noise. So the back vent area is good. No complaints about it. And so I'm going to be mounting my single exhaust fan there, and I'm just going to use all of that mesh at the roof as passive ventilation. Another small thing I did was originally when I mounted the power supply, I mounted it with one black thumb screw in this corner and then 3 silver thumb screws, and I thought that I did it at the time for, you know, contrast or whatever. I was just trying it, but I found it looked bulky and it looked a bit silly. That was the only silver thing at the back, and you know, they just stick out quite a bit. So I replaced all of those with the black low profile screws. They're just the standard coarse thread motherboard screws, or multi-purpose screws for motherboards, hard drives, whatever. So I just replaced all of those power supply screws with the black ones that come with the case. So now it's low profile, like everything else, because there are no other thumb screws at the back of the case anywhere, so it didn't really match. One other small thing to note is on NZXT cases they have an LED here and I think one here that sort of lights up the back I/O section a bit, which is a nice feature. I like that. But what I'd like to see even more than that is on front I/O areas like this, like on glove boxes in a car, when you open it, it lights up, or if you flip down the little visor mirror, there's a light that lights up. I'd like to see, because at night this is very dark, the front I/O thing, I'd like to see some subtle lighting. An LED, I don't know, because that's usually those are too bright, but some sort of subtle lighting along the roof or along the top of this front I/O area, so that you can see what you're plugging into the front at night. And if it had this design with the door, I think it would be nice. It would have some sort of on-off, auto on-off, so when you shut it, it would go off, and then it would come on automatically when you open this front I/O. And I think that would be a nice sort of a quality feature to add into a case like this, or a case that was a bit more expensive than this. So I've got the rear exhaust fan in. I cleaned it. All I used was a damp cloth with a bit of all-purpose cleaner, very mild stuff, and just wiped each blade, and that's how I clean fans. So I've got it in. Some people will position a fan whichever direction has the cord running in the corner that they want, but I'm really fussy to the point where I especially like Noctua fans. Obviously that's why I use them, and I like their logo, so I always mount the fan so that their logo is showing the right way up. And in this case it happens to be it works out, because the cable's short, it comes here and then it just goes into the motherboard header. Also, in addition to the sort of 3-4 millimeter raise that the actual mesh has, on the inside of the case, the screw holes actually have another 2-3 millimeter raise on each screw hole, plus the thickness of the grommet. So altogether, the fan frame and the mesh are probably about 6 or 7 millimeters apart, which is why you don't get too much resistance noise from them. Partly because Noctua fans are so quiet anyway. So here's what the motherboard with everything out. You can see around where the video card is. The video card does exhaust some dust, and so some dust does build up on the chipset heatsink there and around the battery. And just with compressed air, go over that, or with the air compressor if you want. Go over that, and that's about it. I'm gonna. I know this whole video is supposed to be about cable management, and I promise I am getting to that. I'll be doing cable management really soon. So now I'm starting to strip stuff down and take things out that I don't need. First thing that's coming out is the lighting. So I'm gonna. I had the lighting controller thing mounted here with double-sided tape, and that didn't work out because it's fallen off. And I'm not using lighting anyway. I always have it in. Like sometimes I have it in, not always, but I never turn on because it's always, you know, it. First of all, white lighting. When there's other types of lighting in the room like more warm lighting, it always kind of has a cold, sort of bluish tone to it that I don't like. If you turn out all the other kinds of lighting, it does appear to be more clean white. But if you have the lighting on plus warm lighting in the room, I find it has kind of a bluey tone that I don't like. But most of all, it's just too harsh, too bright, there's too much light leaks out of the case. The controller and the wires, extra cables, I don't like. So when I have lighting installed, I always end up just leaving it off all the time. So now I'm just going to take it out, because I'm taking out stuff I'm not using, so I'm just taking the lighting out. So I'm just going to go along the edges here, and just snip everywhere and just pull it all out. And to pull this controller off and take that out, and then take there's a single Molex running to that specifically just to power the lighting, so that's going to come out. And I haven't decided for sure yet if I'm going to power this hot swap bay, but I think I am. But instead of having a dedicated SATA power running up to the top to power it like I do now, and the cable for power that's on it is actually long, and I have a dedicated cord from the power supply coming all the way up to it, and then that cord is just wound all up. What I'm going to do instead is take that dedicated serial tape power right out. I'm going to take the long serial tape power that's on the hot swap bay and run it all the way down to the bottom here, and I have, you can see I have a spare serial HA power from the hard drive, so I'm going to connect it there. So that way, just things like that, combining two different things, if you can, into the one cable, and that helps cut one cable. Another thing I like to do when I'm doing like a full-blown proper build and doing it sort of, you know, final product type build, is I always strip the case down as much as you can. So get the front panel off, get all the sides off, obviously, get everything off that you can. But one thing you do want, just so you have more room to work, more room to, you know, do everything, do your wires up, whatever you want to do, get an idea for what you want to do. One thing to keep in mind though is, you know, sometimes you do see there's spots where the front panel will fit in, you know, and obviously the latches will go into there, and there's a spot that goes in there, so you want to make sure that you don't run any wires in a way that's going to stop the panel, any panel, the side doors included. The side doors have a spot for the latches up at the top in this case. So if you run cables along there, that'll actually stop the case door from clicking on properly. So you just want to make sure when you're running your cables around the front or wherever, make sure you don't run anything that's going to prevent the case panel or whatever from going on. Now, obviously this is something you're gonna, if you do it, you're gonna learn and you're gonna have to change it. But it's just something you want to keep in mind when you're doing your build. So the light is fading again, but basically I have been working on my routes for the cables and pulling everything out. Got the lights out, got all the SATA and the Molex, everything out. The stuff I'm not going to use at the front, like the USB 3, I'm going to just do a little bundle and zip that up into the roof. I'll show you around the back in a minute. I've actually very impressed and very pleased with sort of how it's looking around the back. Here, hopefully you'll be able to see it. This is, the top roof area. This is the header one, and this is the cable that has the fans on it, for the front fans rather. And then if you see here, well, you can't probably, but right here there's actually a anchor point on the roof from my lighting that I had before. So I'm going to be able to actually completely out of sight. You'll never be able to see it at any point ever. I can anchor this fan cable at the roof at any point I want, and then this here cable it's kind of a loose loop, but I kind of like loose loops sometimes. And so that will be the front fans, and obviously the rear fan is already covered here. More importantly though, around the back, and I'll show that now, so you can see around the back, this is what I've been working on. You can see how little there is there. The only thing around the back that there's going to be is front panel stuff, USB 2, and the power for the hot swap, and this is the hot swap. So it's going to be coming in here this time. And it's going to be bundled like this, and zip tied obviously. So it's going to be one tiny bundle, just going straight down, and then anchoring here and here, and that'll be literally it. That's it. That's going to be the only thing that's back here. I mean, with the 8-pin power, you see how I've got it here, and then up here it's kind of like tight. It's pulled tight. It's tighter than I would like. It's not like the end of the world, but I am going to, when I have the motherboard out to run the USB 2 under the motherboard, I'm going to run the 8-pin power under the motherboard in this corner, and then I can zip it here and it'll be straight and more leeway. And you can see my clean path that I'm doing here with these SATA cables. I'm very pleased with this. I've never really had a path this clean with SATA cables before. I've seen it done before in home servers and stuff with people and their builds. I've always wanted to do a really clean path, and I never got around to doing it, but I'm finally doing it now. And then under here is that cable that I'm going to connect the hot swap bay to when I bring that down. Okay, so I've got the motherboard out, and you can see up here I've got the 8-pin running behind the motherboard. I changed my mind on this front fan loop. I decided going all the way to the roof with it was too long of a loop, too long of a path. So I decided to just go behind the motherboard, which you don't need to do it with the motherboard out. The header does fit behind the motherboard when it's on, but whatever. You see I've got the USB connected there, and the 8-pin, or the front panel stuff. And then we go behind here, and you see this is the grommet that is underneath the motherboard, right under the motherboard, and this is the grommet where the front panel stuff and the USB is coming out. And see, now with this 8-pin, I'm gonna just I can pin it here and I'll have some extra slack. So I'll show you in a moment, once I get the motherboard back on, how that looks. It should look good. So I'm back. It's been maybe a couple hours, hour and a half, a couple hours, and I have done most of the cabling now. You can see I do have my single cable bundle going straight down, and then the serial J's here. There's the serial J power comes down with this bundle and goes off to there, to the bottom connection. So that's powering the hot swap bay. This is going to be bundled up with this, but the video card's not in there yet, so I have to get the right length. You can see I've got the 8-pin up through the motherboard, so now it can be just zipped there, and that's a bit more slack. I haven't decided 100% on this fan yet, but I'll deal with that. It's not a big deal. There's the USB 2 and the front panel stuff just there. Now I know there is a bit of crisscross, but that's just how it is. It's not gonna, it's, you know, you can never have it be perfect, and I'm pleased with this. Just gotta get the cooler back on, of course, and gotta get the video card back in, and that's about it. I gotta bundle up the stuff at the front still. But yeah, I mean, it's tidy. It's really tidy, certainly. So, I'm pleased with it. As far as the USB cables, the only thing that I can think of is, you know, maybe if these were sort of bundled in a straight way, but no, I think I'm leaving it like this, because I really like how the USBs do look. So yeah, I think this is the way it's going to be. And the door, I mean, I've never had a door that went on so as smoothly. Even before, like I had the tables neat before, but there's still resistance when you put the door on. This, with this, it's like just putting the door on an empty case. There's nothing. There's nothing bundled together. Really, it's really it's pleasing. I'm pleased with it. So, of course, I need to show this side, which is the main, you know, the main attraction, so to say. And I will show it. So here's the 8-pin power. There's the fan. I think it's gonna stay like that. And then here's the USB and the front panel stuff along the bottom there. It's just tucked up behind the motherboard. And then the serial Ts are just going straight out. So that's clean. So yeah, that's you know, that's it. One thing that I will mention is that I always had this motherboard power kind of up a bit to the point where it would start to bend these flaps, and I never really liked that because there was a bit more leeway in the cord. So this time I made sure that I zipped it to a point where it was tight enough and it would not interfere with these flaps at all, which is, like, I realize is anal to the point where it's ridiculous, but that's just something that I noticed, and I made a note to do it a little different next time I was doing the cables. So there it is. And this is another thing that I would recommend. If you get to the point where your build is going in a direction that you know you're not going to be satisfied with, don't just settle on that and say, oh well, and continue. What I would recommend is step out, take a break, go have dinner, go have lunch, go out, whatever, and have a think. Think about it for a few hours, think about your options, think about what you want to do with it, and then come back and start. And if you've thought of something better, then do that and do it better. Taking a break can be very helpful if you sort of get into a rut where you're not pleased with the direction that it's going. Okay, so I stepped out for a few hours and I am back now, and as you can see I have made some changes. What I've done is sort of tidy up the serial cables and power and stuff and make more straight lines. So before, if you remember, the serial ATA power was coming along like this and the serial ATAs were coming along like this, so it's kind of crisscrossing, and I don't really like that. To me that kind of looks like you know, pit of snakes or something, where everything's kind of going its own angle and direction. I kind of like straight lines, horizontal and vertical straight lines with the cables. So these are going to be straight when I'm finished with them. One of the things that I never really did properly before was a complete vertical run of cables right from the very top of the case right down to the very bottom, and as you can see I have done that this time. And then to get the serial ATA power and stuff over, I did a horizontal straight line run along here, and then so that's what I've done. And along the top I've got the fan run with the fan cable, and so yes, so that's what I did, and that is, I'm very pleased with it. I like it a lot, and I think it looks way cleaner than the last setup that I had done with it. So now I'm mounting the cooler back on, and I've got the cables routed, you know, like I showed before. But what I did with the D14 fan cables is the cables on them are longer than they need to be. So when I put the fans back on, I put just one sort of small loop in it and zip that just to sort of minimize the clutter around the back, and that way this is going to be behind the middle fan, so you're never going to see it, but it's just a tidy small loop to sort of use up some of that extra fan slack cable. I'm going to do that with the middle one too. So that's one of the things that I'm doing to sort of clean it up around the back. Alright, so I'm back, and I have spent some more time on the cables around the back. I got the cooler mounted and the video card and all that in, but more importantly I've got the cables around the back finished. So you can see I've got the PCI and the motherboard power wired up now, anchored in. Everything else anchored in. I've got the Noctua reducers and stuff wired in. You know, everything is done around the back. So now all I have left to do is take the few things from the front panel area and just wind those up and store them in the roof in the optical bay area. So I'm pleased with this. This is the you know, definitely the tidiest cabling job that I've done, and I am pleased with it. So I'm 95% done. I'd say I just need to do the front panel cables bound up in the roof of the optical area, and then one thing I just wanted to show here, I'm pretty much done 100% on the inside. I just with the PCI powers, depending on the number of holes that the graphics card that you have has on the end of it, so some don't have any, or they have them but they're populated with screws holding the heatsink on. Some have actually 3 lined up, and some have just one open or whatever. So there's different combinations. Right now the one I have has 3, but or it has 4 actually, but 3 of them are used. So that just leaves the one closest to the end here. So what I do is once I get the graphics power the right length, I just take a zip tie, put it through that one hole in the PCB, and then tighten it up. Always remember, do be gentle with PCBs and stuff when you're working with them. And then I just do that, and then snip it. I also take this and sort of bend it up so that it sort of sticks right alongside the 6-pin that is actually plugged in, so that it looks like it's not hanging out. And then once you've snipped, then that's like that. That looks like that. And so that's what I do with the PCI power cables. And it just sort of tidies everything up, keeps it in place. I don't like people, sorry, not people. I don't like with individually sleeved cables when there's very large loops, kind of loose loops, sort of, you know, I think that it doesn't look very good to have a very big loop. So I like to keep things nice and tight, nice and direct, and that's how I do it. While we're at it, I might as well show you the sort of basement area, or just the bottom of the case. There it is. Pretty empty along there. Not much. All the stuff that was there I took out. And then there's the ceiling area. I've gotten to the optical bay area at the top here, which is where I usually hide the unused cables from the front area. So you see here I've got the HD audio in a little bundle, the fan controller stuff in a little bundle, and the really bulky USB 3 pass-through stuff in a bundle. So the stuff that's already there that actually is being used, you can see that stuff is being passed along through into the back area. I've got a couple mounting points inside of there on the ceiling, on the bottom of the hot swap bay more specifically, and on the left one I use that just to fasten the USB cable and the front panel button stuff. And then that sort of merges with the hot swap bay stuff here, and that's nice and tidy, which is something I never was able to do before. My sort of top front area has always been messy. This is the first time I've really done it. I've had them bundled, but it was never tidy, properly tidy. So first I'm going to take the USB and tuck it underneath here, which is easy because it's quite small. Then I'm going to take the USB 3s, which are larger, and put them through here, but first I will put a zip tie through, and the small zip tie will fit, but it is quite small, so I might, well, okay. Yeah, I think I will need to get a larger one. The small 4-inch zip ties are long enough to wrap around the USB 3 bundle, but just barely. So once you get it through the anchor point, it just wasn't long enough. So I've got the larger size up. I'm gonna put that one through. That's no problem. And then these, I want to kind of wrap it so that these, the headers, are not going to be sticking into the main chamber. So that's how I want it. I'm going to hold it. And then fasten it. And also with the 650D, right here is the little flap that divides the 2.5mm and the 3.5mm drives in the hot swap bay, so you push that down when you're putting a 3.5-inch drive. So if you bundle cables here and block it, it will sort of stop that from pressing down, and you'll need to move those cables or else you won't be able to press it down. So I've steered clear of that because I did notice that before. Once I cut the cable, I like to sort of slide the tie so that the head is kind of hidden, so that it's a little bit more neat. And that's the one side done. And then the other side is just the fan stuff, which is pretty small. And I'm just going to stick that into this little spot, but I'll just shove that into there. And I don't think that will move very much because it's so small and light. And so that's that. That's how I do the top front panel area. This certainly is going to be dark, but on the power supply side, on the interior, once you're finished with all the stuff, you might notice that there's a few cables, like the PCI or the motherboard one, hanging out a little bit. So what I like to do on the inside is sort of just take them and push them towards the power supply so that they're kind of tucked, and then take another one of those larger zip ties and just go around at one time with that. And I'm gonna have a photo of this so that you can see better what I'm talking about here. So now that's the cabling in the roof done, cabling around the back done, and cabling around the front everywhere. So I'm going to wrap up now by just fitting the panels and making sure there's no cables sticking anywhere that will prevent the panels from going on properly. So first the front one. So that fits on nice. Next, the side panel for the behind the motherboard side. Now if you have one of these cases, you'll know that you do get some resistance from these sometimes, and there is a tiny bit, mainly just the motherboard ATX power sticking out from the motherboard tray a tiny bit, but you just give it a press and there it is. There's the main side. So there you go. That is basically how I would build a custom system, and a custom system for myself or for someone else if I was building for them. So this is the day after. I filmed the main portion of my build log entry, and I filmed a some footage of the interior of the case and the back area of the case last night, but the back area of the case, the camera didn't focus correctly, and the light was quite low anyway, so I'm just filming a short piece from the interior, and along the back I will do a short piece there to show it. The interior, the focus was okay on the interior, but it's just showing it in a different light, and so that's what this is now. Alright, so here is the finished cable management around the motherboard tray area. So the main thing you want to do is try to keep your cables, try to bundle things together when you can. Personally I like the look of horizontal and vertical runs of cable best, so I try to do that as much as possible. And just keep it clean, keep the things bundled together, and that's about it. And then practice. You just have to practice. Once you've done it a few times, it starts to get a lot easier. And try to look at what you're doing as you're doing it, and see, is this the cleanest that it can look, or is there things I could change to make this cleaner? Or is there one cable running one way and the other cable running another way? And could I bundle those together? Could I change the route of one of them and bundle them together and make that cleaner? And also, if you're working on it and you see that it's not really going the way you'd like, you see the routes that you've done with the cables are not as direct as you would like, or they're not straight, they're fragmented. Just tear it down, and do it again. Do it over. If you're gonna be fussy about it, just do it again. Do it better the next time. And don't be afraid. Even if you spend some time doing the what you're doing now, if you don't like it and you're not gonna be happy with it, you're not gonna be happy with it. So do it again and do it better. And once you are happy with it, you're gonna be very pleased, and it's gonna be more enjoyable for you personally. So that is it for how I do a build, a personal build or a custom build. And that was cable management.